Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. And last episode, we were talking about cybersecurity frameworks, what they are, and we actually picked NIST CSF, National Institute of Standards and Technologies, cybersecurity framework, for our example. We walked through the first two major control categories, identify and protect. So in today's episode, if we can get through it all, we'll cover detect, respond, and recover. We're not going to go control by control. We're not talking about every single one. That would be many episodes on that. But that being said, we're going to pick out some interesting ones and talk about them today. But before we do, Mike, why don't you kick us off with the news?
I think after this meeting, we should talk about NIST, the National Institute of Sipping Tequila. That should be after this.
I like that.
41% of businesses had an API security incident last year. APIs, as we all know, are heavily leveraged with an average of 15,000 APIs in use among survey respondent organizations and a growth rate of 201% over the past 12 months. 41% of organizations represented by survey respondents had an API security incident in the last 12 months. 63% of those noted that the incident involved a data breach or data loss. 90% of respondents noted that their organizations have API authentication policies in place, but 31% expressed shaky confidence that those policies ensured adequate levels of authentication. 35% of survey respondents said projects were specifically delayed due to API security concerns. 87% of those believe more effective integration of API security testing into developer pipeline activities could have prevented those delays. And finally, only 51% of respondents have full confidence in our API inventories. 26% reported their inventory update processes are manual. So got that going for us. Log4Shell is back. Millions of job apps remain vulnerable to Log4Shell. 4 months after the discovery of the zero-day Log4Shell critical flaw, millions of job applications still remain vulnerable to compromise, researchers have found. Researchers at security firm Rezilion analyzed the current potential attack surface for the vulnerability in the popular open source Apache Struts framework. The flaw in the ubiquitous Java logging library Apache Log is easily exploitable and can allow unauthenticated remote code execution and complete server takeover. Researchers did a search on Shodan to see how many apps vulnerable to Log4Shell are exposed to the internet. They identified 90,000 potential vulnerable internet-facing applications, which they believe is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the actual vulnerable attack surface. Researchers divide the apps into three categories. The first two are containers that in their latest version still contain obsolete versions of Log4j, and containers that, while their latest version is up to date, yet still show evidence of using previous versions. The third category are publicly facing servers of Minecraft. So depending how you feel about Minecraft, that's either a big deal or it's not. Researchers cited other sources for further proof that Log4Shell attack surface remains vast. One was the Google service Open Source Insights, which scans millions of open source packages. The service found that out of the total 17,840 packages affected by the flaw, only 7,100 were patched. So,
Enderman. Those of you in the Minecraft world, this is Enderman coming in on you at any given moment. Patch your stuff. I was gonna say, I figured you probably wouldn't get that reference, Mike. It's okay. You gotta stay in touch. You gotta stay in touch.
Is that like Miss Pac-Man?
No. Enderman's like probably one of the. Well, I don't know. It could be argued. I'm gonna have a bunch of Minecraft nerds like throwing trash at me now, but it's essentially one of the most terrifying things in the game because you never know when he's going to appear, and so you can just be kind of mining and crafting to mine, and you know what I mean. Like it doesn't matter, anyways. And he just shows up. So it's kind of like. Yeah, it's kind of like Log4Shell. You know what I mean?
So he's kind of like the John Wick of Minecraft.
Yeah, he's like worse than John Wick. He doesn't use weapons either. He just smacks you a bunch.
So he's the Baba Yaga.
Yeah, he's the Baba Yaga of Minecraft. Exactly. Yeah, he shows up and slaps the living crap out of you pretty much.
Meteoric attack deploys quantum ransomware in mere hours. A group wielding the quantum locker ransomware is hitting targets in blitzkrieg-like manner, going from initial compromise to domain-wide deployment and execution in under 4 hours. The most recent attack started with an email containing an attachment or link to an ISO image containing the ICE ID payload, the name of the weaponized ISO file, docs_invoice_173.iso, gives a general idea of its subject. After the unfortunate user opened the file, the ICE ID payload was executed and child processors will respond to create persistence and start discovering information about the system via built-in Windows utilities. After a Cobalt Strike beacon was deployed, the threat actor tuned in to continue the attack and to discover and target an organization's Active Directory, gather host-based network information, extract admin credentials from LSAS memory, use the credentials to RDP into a server, execute a PowerShell Cobalt Strike beacon, make RDP connections, and a whole lot of other bad stuff. So read that article. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, quantum hacking is becoming a deal. Linux Nimbus pawn flaws could allow attackers to deploy sophisticated threats. Microsoft 365 Defender research team has discovered 2 Linux privilege escalation flaws tracked as CVE 2022-29799 and CVE 2022-29800 called Nimbus Pawn, which can be exploited by attackers to conduct various malicious activities, including the deployment of malware. Vulnerabilities can be chained together to gain root privilege, allowing attackers to deploy payloads like a root backdoor and perform other malicious actions via arbitrary root code execution, according to Microsoft, although Microsoft calling out somebody else for a vulnerability. We're not going to go down that. The vulnerabilities can be chained together to gain root privileges on Linux systems, allowing attackers to deploy payloads. The flaws can be exploited by attackers to achieve root access, and the flaws reside in system D component called network dispatch, which is the dispatcher daemon for the system D network D connection status changes. And then we just have some headlines. Quantum ransomware seen deployed in rapid network attacks. It's becoming a bigger deal. T-Mobile got breached again by Lapsus. There's an Iranian hacking group, I believe they're called Fierce Kitten, that is exploiting recently disclosed VMware RCE flaw. Cloudflare blocked a record HTTPS DDoS attack peaking at 15 RPS. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Check out the headlines at the page. And Laura, what you got for us?
Sorry, let me put my Minecraft game down for a moment. What are we talking about again? Yeah, exploits. So got a couple things for everybody this week. I think what's important is that this morning ZDNet published an article that basically is titled Vulnerable Plugins Plague the CMF's website security landscape, right? So I've got one, Fuel CMS. And if you might remember, so all of you admins using Fuel CMS, just make sure you patch right now. Okay, so we've got a couple exploit payloads. You may remember one from last year that was remote code execution for 1.4. This week we have one for 1.5. We also got a cross-site request forgery. So again, make sure that you're looking for that Fuel CMS update if you are using that. And of course, to make things worth for all the DevOps guys out there, GitLab 14.9 has an authentication bypass. So hold your drinks, like don't spill your coffee. Okay, here's the thing. If you're using OmniAuth, okay, if you've got something integrated with OmniAuth, for whatever reason, OmniAuth is requiring a hard-coded password. Hard-coded password exists everywhere that OmniAuth is being used in conjunction with your GitLab packages. So make sure you change that. Try to use some other type of authentication. They've published the password. It's gnarly. It's Enderman too, right? So don't get GitLab Enderman. Okay, so that's really it. Patch Fuel CMS, patch your GitLab, and Zach, something tells me we're talking about NIST.
We are.
Something about tequila.
We are going to talk to. Yeah, I kind of want to talk about hard-coded passwords now. First, that you brought it up, but I thought we were past the 90s.
Oh no, they're back. They're back. Yeah, kids are dressing in the 90s, and apparently dev guys are running stuff like the 90s again. So here we go.
Back in fashion.
Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah. I'm glad I never sold my Jabot jeans. You know what I mean? I can't wait to put those back on.
Yep, I'm gonna put my checked Vans back on and
British Knights. Yeah. Little Kangol hat. I'm gonna rock it. It's gonna be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, please don't. Please
get
don't.
my Duran CDs out.
Listen, millennial, you wouldn't know nothing about the 90s, okay? You were still falling off the slide. You know, you're the reason we had to put plastic equipment up, Zach.
Metal's too dangerous for the millennials these days.
You weren't watching where you're going. You hit your head on the slide, and then somebody was like, "Well, if this was plastic, Zach wouldn't have busted his face." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a reason to make it plastic."
You wouldn't have what you have today. Well, let's You guys can go get your 90s gear on while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
All right, we are back in 2022 and going to talk about the NIST cybersecurity framework. It's an excellent one. There are a lot of excellent ones out there, but we are using this as an example. You can get it online, go to the NIST website, download the spreadsheet, walk through it, and enjoy. But we're going to pick out some controls as we go. And well, like I said earlier, we covered the identify and protect sections. There are 3 more to go through in this framework: detect, respond, recover. So we're going to start right at the top of detect and anomalies and events. Where would you guys like to start? Because I think there's a lot we could unpack here, but we don't have time for all of it.
Well, I have a heartache with this topic. So I think I prefaced the whole podcast today to you guys by saying that I don't really want to talk about this because it makes me angry. so for everybody out there, you get to listen to me actually rant for once on one of these podcasts. But I guess we should. For once. You think I rant all the time? I try to hold it back, man. That's what we're doing here. I'm just saying I'm no holds barred today. So all you sim and logging nerds out there are about to eat dirt. Okay, so for the first one here, I think is important, right? Because you need a baseline. You need to do some diagram baselines and things like that so that you at least understand what is a normal operations look like for your architecture, right? So if you've got Active Directory, we know there's a bunch of hero ports that are talking to other Active Directory stuff, but you should still lay this forth in some form of a diagram that you can use with others to like share a blueprint of your architecture and how your systems all integrate and work together. That is very, very helpful, not only for rebuilding things or understanding how they work, but also for troubleshooting when things go down. You can refer to that diagram and like you would a schematic on an inverter generator or something to try to troubleshoot why it's not starting. So there's a lot of advantages to that, I think. Okay, now into the crap it's not. So with anomalies and events in this specific section, they're going to ask about detecting events, that making sure that you're analyzing the events and understanding if there's attack targets or methods inside of that event. Okay, you're also going to be asked to look for event data and collect it, and then correlate that for multiple sources. Okay, really, this is just syslogging. Okay, for now, we'll start with that. Okay, here's it gets even deeper when they start asking about the impact of events, and then incident alerts on a threshold for the number of events are established. As an example, if I'm trying to log in as Mike Rotondo and I get his password wrong 5 times because I don't know it, it's probably Teacup Coffee Man. But yeah, I drink my coffee out of a teacup. That's nothing wrong with that, Mike. If that's British. Anyway, so if that happens, there should be an alert that is sent somewhere to a dashboard, hopefully, and says, hey, there's been 4 invalid attempts to Mike Rotondo's account. Okay, that's what NIST is asking for here. So let me begin my rant. Mike, stop me any moment. Did I miss anything with the ridiculousness of this yet?
No, not yet. I do have like a point that I'll make at the end of yours, though.
Okay, I'll lead the way in here. You can see I'll finish this off with a tap dance, and then I'll kind of motion you to come over.
Yeah, and I'll bring out the ventriloquist dummy, and we can finish it up.
I like it. This is going to be an act. Okay, here's the thing. Event. Okay, there's a lot of companies out there going to be really mad at me, and I don't care. I don't care. Logging is bunk. It's stupid. It's dirt. It is from a time in the world. We're talking about IT in the 90s. Well, you remember hackers back in the day, right? In the spooky times of Kevin Mitnick, I'd break into a system because, well, there was no security to begin with, but I'd log in and I would do some stuff and I'd be like, ha ha ha, no one's going to know I'm here. So I'm going to delete the log file. Okay. And then some security guy was like, well, man, every time the hackers are in here, they delete the log files. And someone had a brilliant idea. Well, like, hey, let's just take the logs and put them on another file server. That way, if they delete the logs, we still got it. And then the cyber criminal found that out. He's like, ha ha ha, I'll just anonymize my connectivity so you don't know. And the log file no longer matters to you. Here we go. All right, this whole cat and mouse has gone around and around. This makes me so angry because this stuff is sold like snake oil out there. So be very cautious about the money you spend and the time you spend on logging. Should you do it? Yes, to some capacity, but I'll use this. Logging is like a car alarm. Okay. It'll tell you that your car's being broken into. It's not going to stop the burglar from breaking into your car. Okay. What's going to happen is you're going to get an insurance discount because you have an alarm system. All right. The whole point of this is that forensics is going to come back after the attack, right? After you've had some form of a breach or an incident, and you can look at the logs to try to put together what might have happened. Okay. If you're using, Google or you're using Microsoft Office 365, governance and compliance, the security and compliance is that's built into the tool is going to take care of all that for you. Right. But if you're trying to deploy some big metal ArcSight-ish SIM type thing, really, really sit down and try to do a return on investment for here. And please listen to me, please. There are many, many more other activities that are more proactive and that will reduce your risk exposure, especially on the public internet spaces, than logging. Logging should be the last thing in a proactive security strategy, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, I'm done, Mike. Please come in and say,
so
my sanity.
No, my only point is you're going from a operational standpoint, and you're exactly right. From stopping a hack, it is virtually useless. Where it is required now is for the forensics piece, but it's also your insurance carrier is going to want you to log it. And that's where, and SOC 2 is going to want you to log it because it gives them that warm fuzzy that can prove that you're actually making efforts to secure your systems. It's all about liability at this point, I think, and culpability. And, it comes down to CYA if something happens. And you're like, you can log and say, yeah, I did this, I did that, I did this, and this is what happened. And they can go back and track it forensically. Now, they can use that aggregate data to go ahead and find the next attack and, do pattern analysis. But for you, the operations person, it helps you not, because, the average breach is discovered after like 184 days. So that's a whole lot of logging that didn't help you. If you've got ArcSight or Tripwire or one of those, or you're using a big aggregator tool like Sumo or one of those, what's it tell you? It's not telling you anything. You're still not finding it.
No, it takes so much time. People don't realize is like getting syslog to drop to a file server. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
Writing your parsers to alert on anomalies, that is so difficult. And if you don't want to go through all the work, you don't have a team of DevOps guys that can do this, you're spending the money for the tool with the templates. And it's just, it's a massive amount of money for these tools, but you're right. It is a CYA. I will agree with you there. In a court of law, it's going to look very good if you've had a breach and you were syslogging. And even if you can show it on a diagram, because maybe if it's a ransomware breach with this quantum stuff you're talking about, Mike, and your file server that's got the syslogs probably is going to get locked too.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I just think back to the company that you and I worked with for a while that, they had this giant aggregator installation, and the guy that picked it out was a Python guy. So all the scripts, the alert scripts, were written in Python. And, we as a separate security unit were told, okay, use this tool and go ahead and write your Python scripts. Well, nobody wrote Python but this guy. So it was like basically useless because there were no canned scripts. There was no you didn't have a dedicated team writing scripts to pull the data out. And it was just, basically useless. A giant financial, a global company that had deployments of this all over the world. And it was basically useless because you didn't have anybody to write the Python scripts. So
I remember that. That actually motivated me to learn Python though. So I will thank them for that. But yeah, that was a nightmare. I do remember that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean how to do it, but I mean the speed to market, or not speed to market, but the prep time to be able to get to that point was 6 weeks before you're competent at it, right? Because we had other things to do.
Totally.
So, but
Well,
Okay.
let's
anyway,
move right on down the list here so you can tell us how you really feel about things. Let's lump in security monitoring and detection processes kind of in one conversation.
Better mind your
So-
tone. You're pushing your luck, Fuller.
Somebody's got to keep this ball rolling,
That's true. Mike and I like to stomp on things a lot. Is it dead yet? Doesn't matter. Stomp it again. All right. So,
it's like that scene in Office Space with the printer.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Only when we're done, there's just dirt left over and we're still stomping on it. Okay.
Yep.
So this is one I actually do value, right, as part of the frameworks. And it's nothing against the frameworks. I mean, again, these were written by individuals that were at a time in computing in history in a place where all this stuff probably made sense, right? Things change, right? Things evolve very quickly. But this one is one that has held true throughout the evolution of cyber and IT in general. And that's continuous monitoring, the idea of detecting cyber threats and things that might happen, and making sure that, like, malicious code, you have a way to detect some form of malicious code. It doesn't stop you from 0 days and new things that are coming out, but for all the the older stuff that's still getting kicked around, it's a good idea to have that malware stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's required in pretty much every framework, including this one, including NIST-CSF. And then the other one that we're big proponents of, obviously installing some malware, not Windows Defender. And I'm talking about like the old Windows Defender, not the new stuff that they've got, the advanced threat protection style, but vulnerability scans. That is a huge way for you to limit your attack surface right now, is to just do continuous vulnerability scanning.
I think one of the things you have to do is divorce the terms monitoring and logging as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You're going to log what you monitor, but monitoring with active alerting is effective, whereas logging is just passive. So the active versus the passive is where we have to be focused.
Yeah, good point, Mike. Good point.
Now, here's the problem: if you're a shop of 3 people and you're just trying to keep everything up, it's hard to handle all those alerts. So
it is hard. And we, I think we see some clients struggle with that, right? Where they're trying to obtain SOC 2 or they're trying to obtain CSF, and they're just small. And then you have to have some manual method to kind of monitor things, right? Logging's kind of taken care of for you, because most out of the box software today, even I can't hardly say it. I'm sorry, Microsoft. It's hard to get out. But anyways, this stuff comes out of the box, like with logging and monitoring built into it, right? So you're going to get an event log, a system log, application log, security log, so forth. So you're logging, but you need to actually go in and, the whole point of this section of NIST-CSF and any other one where they're talking about this is you need to have some manner of going in and looking to see if there's anything that's suspicious that happened.
Right. Yeah, but the problem is then you get tools like Tripwire out there that do logging and monitoring, and you have to have dedicated resources just to do that. I mean, like full time, because you're getting thousands upon thousands of alerts a day.
Thousands.
So you need to determine what your threshold is, and you really need to fine tune it. So that's a project in and of itself. I mean, you can figure it's going to take a good 6 months to get things dialed in.
Yeah, if you're going to put something in place, like buy a good anti-malware. Something that's, something like a Sophos or a Carbon Black, or there's a bunch of them out there. Do your research, find something that works for you, something that provides some form of artificial intelligence based decision making on things that it sees happening on your workstation. Okay. These are also going to have other types of modules that will provide like endpoint encryption and things like that. So bundle it if you can. And do vulnerability scanning. I think that is the number one thing to lower that attack surface on your internal infrastructure and compute resources, and your external facing public kind of sitting on the sideline there of the public internet, looking at the same attack surface. If you do those two things, you can really, really reduce your attack surface and your risk surface to a good manageable place where you can sleep at night and not have to worry. But then you got to come back and figure out how to dig the hole of the grave that is logging.
Yeah. One key thing too is define your SLAs. So it's good that you've got the monitoring, you've got your logging, and you've got your monitoring, you've got your alerting, you've got vulnerability scans. Define your SLAs, and also put human intel onto those vulnerabilities. Because how many times have we seen, a vulnerability scan report a 10 that really isn't exploitable?
You've got SSL version 1. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's TLS version 1. It's red. It's all red. It's deprecated. We got to do something right now. Right now, stop the company and let's fix this.
The CISOs at these big companies are nothing more than politicians that don't really know anything. And, oh my God, there's a 10 and I heard about it in the news. And so we must stop everything we're doing and fix that, despite the fact that, there's no exploit. You have to have physical access to the box. It's stuff like that. I mean, it's just like
they don't get it. Yeah, there's a huge knowledge gap, and even with just some of the technical individuals that'll see a vulnerability and not understand that it's a vulnerability, but that doesn't mean that we have an exploit payload that's created and crafted that we can use out there to act to make this do something. Right. Otherwise, it's just like, there's a crack in the dam. Okay, well, there's no water on the other side, so who cares? You know what I mean? If there's still water back, then there's a problem.
Right.
But yeah, there's a huge knowledge gap. So, one of the reasons that we do the exploits every day is for you to have knowledge of software that is exploited, that can be exploited today,
right,
versus what is just vulnerable or has a software flaw that no one's really taken the time to write an exploit for. They still need to be patched, but you can tempo that back. And so, like when the CEO sees the vulnerability scan report from the new security guy, and it's labeling TLS1 as a 10, you can take a breath.
Exactly. And CISOs, I don't mean to be so hard on you, but listen closely. Take a class. Take a CISSP class. Take a C-risk class. Or get familiar with the subject matter.
Are you telling me a forced password reset and cutting power to the building is not sufficient?
No.
TLS1, it might be.
Shut down the network connection. Yeah.
We've got TLS1.
Everybody unplug your computers, quick.
Yeah.
TLS1's running. Turn it off.
Speaking of which, let's move on to the respond section here and cruise through this in 5 minutes or less, and talk about incident response planning and communication and forensics and all the good stuff.
I can't even talk about 5 minutes or less in 5 minutes or less, man. Like, what are you doing?
If I was good at communications, I'd still be married.
I promised our listeners we would get through the last 3 sections. Actually, I didn't. I said if we have time, but we're going to make time. We're going to make it happen. So let's talk about incident response planning.
We see a lot of companies out there that will buy IR plans from big providers like Dell and other things like that. And they write, and I swear these guys get paid by the word, because, a 75-page IR plan it's just ridiculous at a certain point. And you got to tailor these things to your actual organization. You have to tailor them to what you're capable of and what your knowledge base is. And, but they are critical.
So they're 75 pages long with no pictures. I just want to make sure everybody understands.
Yeah. No pictures, no cartoons. Yeah, it's 75 pages of just word after word. Anyway, the long story of it is you have to have, it's not enough to have an IR plan. It's to have an IR plan that works for you, just like a DR plan that works for you, and test it. As Lauro said, it's just critical to test these things. We do tabletop exercises. We recommend that we do them quarterly. We try and do tabletop exercises for DR whenever possible. But it's just critical. And I think we probably have more NIST for the next meeting, huh? Next podcast.
Well, I think
NIST for breakfast.
I think incident response planning that's its own. I think what we should do is pull this out and talk about this on its own episode, right? And really dig in to incident response plans, maybe disaster recovery plans, talk about what's in those documents and how to shave them down from 75 pages to maybe 72 pages, right? And make them really good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be less than that, but you get the gist. And we'll put some pictures in them too. So, yeah, that said, let's just talk about the recovery section. I mean, really only kind of three primary controls here, but touch on that briefly, and then we will call it a wrap for NIST CSF. Maybe we'll do CIS controls next time, or ISO 27001. Who knows? Get crazy with it. So
don't tempt me with a good time. I'm going to take my shirt off if we're talking about CIS. So
we'll make that a video podcast then.
No, you probably don't want to do that. Hey, so real quick on recovery, I think the most important thing about recovery is that, one, you have and capture some lessons learned. You didn't do it perfectly. I guarantee you. Even if you're Microsoft. Yeah. Anyways, nobody does it perfect. Okay. So keep that in mind. You should always come away with lessons learned. You can call them key takeaways if you don't like being told you had to learn a lesson. We had a client recently that had a heartache with that term. I thought was he didn't specify that, but I could tell when I said lessons learned, he was like, well, we didn't have any lessons that were learned. And I was like, how key takeaways? And he's like, yeah, we had some key takeaways. And I'm like, all right, man, potato, let's do it. You know what I mean? So whatever you need to call it's fine. But take away something that you were able to learn and understand as part of the exercise. And then two, take those lessons learned, take those key points, and then put them back into the process so that they're included for the next time.
Concur.
What I missed.
I think you did it perfectly. There are no lessons learned from there's no key takeaways that we have to have from your key takeaways conversation.
Cool. Lessons learned then.
Yes.
Well, outstanding. I love it. Accomplish the mission mentality. That's part of it. That's, one of our core values at Silent Sector, right? You just get it done. Doesn't matter what you call it. Make it happen.
Yeah. Well, except for like RCCO2, right, where it says reputation is repaired after an incident. Yeah, you can try, but
Yeah. I just like the T-shirt. Nobody cares. Work harder.
That's exactly it. I was about to throw when you're talking about just the time it takes and full-time job for monitoring some of these systems. It's like, well, why can't people just work harder and longer and more hours?
Yeah,
they love that, right? That's kind of been the mentality in the industry. Well, outstanding. This has been good. First time we've walked through a security framework, and we've talked about bits and pieces of these throughout the podcast episodes. We're on 60 something now, and we've covered a lot, but it's good, I think, to walk through over a series of 2 episodes and go end to end. Of course, not hitting every control in detail, but just covering the fundamentals. So hopefully that helped everybody listening understand what's in these frameworks, why they're important, and most importantly, understand that it's not about just making it up as you go, right? There's these industry standards that are already in place, are proven, they're best practices, they're out there for you to follow. So it's not starting from scratch and trying to figure it out all on your own. Take a methodical approach, a scientific approach, and make it happen. So with that, thank you for listening to the CyberAnts podcast. At cyberantspodcast.com, you can get the links to the news articles. You can connect with us. You can request different topics, whatever you want to do. You can interact on that site, also on LinkedIn as well. Please make sure you rate the podcast, subscribe, share it, because we want to help get this information out to more people that could use it. And your help is tremendously appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us once again, and we will see you on the next episode.
Pick up your copy of the CyberAnts book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberAnts podcast.